about how you can self-fund your own AI factory. The reason why we thought about this topic as an important topic was because a lot of people say, hey, I want to do an AI use case, but I do not have funding, or how do I make a business case, right? So what I thought about is, while helping customers, and customers not in the UK, but also across Europe and US, that the biggest thing was to how to make it self-funding. Because you do one use case, you make money out of it, save money, and that money can be used to spend on future AI projects, right? And what we do in IBM is we've got three-prong attack, or three-prong process. One is how we deliver our project itself. We do use a lot of AI tools to deliver the project, and we'll speak to that in a minute. We also use SAP's Business AI. Now, SAP's Business AI is great for a lot of things because it has got a lot of capabilities out of the box that you can switch on. And I have a few slides to explain how that can be done, which means without having to do any custom development, you can switch on a few things and start getting some AI out of the box. For example, you might think, I'm in ECC today, how do I do AI out of the box? You might have BTP. If not, get yourself a BTP account, that's the minimum. You could also use an AWS Azure account as well, but we are an SAP meeting, conference here, so let's talk about SAP. And you have a SaaS product. All of you have some SaaS product. I mean, how many of you use a SaaS product from SAP, like SuccessFactors or Ariba or Concur? All of you do, right? You can switch on AI in that today, even though you're in ECC. So a lot of people think, oh, I'm not an S4, I can't do AI. No, you can't. You don't have to. You can just switch it on in your Aribas and SuccessFactors today. The most useful one being Joule, which is pretty much out of the box, plus a lot more on top of it. And then IBM has built a few custom AI projects where we can bring in a custom AI to you, plug it into your landscape, and you start seeing value. The benefit of that is that you do not have to start from building a project and saying, oh, it's a 9-month project, oh, it's a S400 transformation, 18 months, 24 months, 36 months. These out-of-the-box custom AIs can be deployed in a matter of weeks, 6 to 8 weeks, pretty much typically you can deploy production. For a lot of compliance, maybe 12 weeks, otherwise it doesn't take a long time. In terms of implementation, because we are going to be talking about custom AI and business AI, what is very important is how do I implement AI? So even to implement AI, you will need a user story, you will need to write some test scripts, you will need to write some specs, because you cannot just move code to production without any documentation. We have basically put IBM accelerators to even help you with that. So if you go do a workshop, and then in the workshop you discuss the whole project, the whole workshop meeting teams, for example, could summarize it, Copilot, and this tool from IBM, and can be Microsoft's product as well, doesn't really matter, but it's using GPT behind the scenes, is able to summarize it, make points, create user stories for you, create function specs for you, possibly create a detailed enough technical spec which you still need a developer or an architect to update because it's still a straw man, and even create test scripts for you and training documents for you. So that's pre-built. That's what we've achieved. Then in terms of code generation, we have not achieved code generation in ABAP yet. So disclaimer right up front, but you can generate a lot of code in CAP or SAP BTP with Java, and as well as Fury screens can be created. But if you're doing a very complex application, not possible. But there is a lot of development going on as to how you can build your own, scripting through prompt engineering. ABAP will be behind the curve. I'm pretty sure in the next year or two it will catch up. The biggest challenge with ABAP is that it doesn't have enough training data in open source for the LLM to learn. And we don't do ourselves very good. We made SAP a closed ecosystem. ABAP became a language that SAP produced, and none of the LLMs knew about it. Because guess what? All the LLMs thought, let me learn Python and Java, and they did that, but they could not get enough data for ABAP, and therefore that's why we are lagging behind. And then when you start deploying the asset and you've done the testing, you've done and put it in production, you need to maintain it, right? And you're going to have defects, you're going to have issues around it. So we also have, for the deploy phase, an AI automation platform which looks at defects, looks at the issues that people are raising, and tries to auto-heal the system. So I'm bringing the whole thing around here. And what I'm telling you about this can also be done for ECC products, can also be done for your S4 products, can be done for Ariba projects. So just one concept. So explain, I want to build a custom AI, I use it. Because palatable to the business, okay, you're not boiling the ocean, you're doing something small. They see the benefit and say, wow, this works, so why can't we expand it? It can plug into Jira, it can plug into Monday.com. Usually, it's not you're not ripping on anything. You're using existing tools and then letting it in. Then, what is the value from generative AI? A lot of people say, hey, I want to do AI, I want to do generative AI, but what's the use case? Why do I need a generative AI in SAP? It's not a call center, right? My simple use case is an invoice verification use case. You get an invoice from a customer. You have Vim OpenText, which does which scans the invoice, tries to do a two-way match and a three-way match. In most of the cases, at header level is pretty good, about 80%. At line item level, you will struggle with lots of different parameters. Your tax codes are not right. You're not able to put it on the right company code, or right accounting documents, and no one's looking at contracts. A lot of people say, hey, but contract is not the main thing. We think that contract is important because when someone is creating a purchase order, he or she may not have picked the right values from the contract. You might take a contract from SAP, but an actual physical contract may have much more clearer terms, which may have been missed. So we try to do a four-way match here by saying, I will also look at a contract to make sure that anything that a contract has, and also capturing my invoice and making sure I'm not overpaying, underpaying, or paying early because my contract says 90 days, the invoice says 75 days, I'm paying 75 days, not knowing that the contract actually says 90 days. Can happen, so this is only to prevent that kind of thing from happening. So that's one thing. And just to do this one use case, I think that if you can figure out how you do this use case in your organization, you could save a lot of money. And the best thing about it, when I say self-funded AI factories, even before I start this project, I will come to your organization, read all your invoices, look at all your contracts for the past year, do a mapping in a very small time period and say how much money you've already leaked in the last year or two that you will crawl back from your vendors. So that's what I call self-funding AI factory, because you are then able to go back to your vendors and say, hey, I overpaid you, here's a contract, but we paid you, I would like to have money back from you. And that basically you're pretty much done without even implementing anything. You just came in, we came in with a scanner, we scanned your data and gave you a report saying here is the places where you've been leaking money. And that itself becomes your business case to go and implement software or this app. This doesn't take anything away. It sits on top of ECC, sits on top of Ariba, sits on top of S4HANA, has a BTP layer on top, uses a bit of machine learning or AI algorithms from either an Azure LLM or an AWS LLM or SAP's AI core. It's very, it just sits on top of it. If you say I've already invested a lot on my Vim and OpenText, it can sit on top of Vim and OpenText. We just integrate into it and can just do the work that Vim and OpenText can't do. Because what does Vim and OpenText do? When they cannot do something, they hand it to a human. And then the human is doing it. AI becomes a human here in the loop. They basically try to do what a human could have done or would have done. And then when it cannot do anymore, that's when it hands over to humans. So my estimate is that 20 to 30% Vim OpenText or any of your three-way matching from SAP standard, about 50 to 60% the AI takes over, and you still have about 10 to 15% going to the human. But what's going to the human is now less compared to before. So this is my idea of talking about a self-funded AI where you take a use case, you just do a proper analysis of its data and systems and understand that there's value and then build on top. And what defines the success is basically clean data. A lot of customers can't start that because the data is not clean. You do not have master data there, you do not have proper historical data. So whenever we go and talk to customers, we say your data has to be clean in a way that you can work on it. And again, you can use a lot of AI, as much as you want, but unless you have clean data, you won't get anywhere. For example, if you say I have got vendors, but I do not have the right classification of vendors, I do not have the right categories of vendors, I do not have the right coding blocks assigned to my accounting principles, you'll never be able to match them properly. Obviously, we're talking about productivity, and everyone's talking about Joule, and everyone's talking about AI chatbots. But this has actually increased over time. Between December 2022, when GPT 3.5 came out, over to everyone made it a commodity that anybody could use, people have been trying to think how to implement in an enterprise scale manner. And like what Parit said and what Deep you mentioned, implementing something in a corporate environment is tough. It takes time, and you have to do the plumbing, you have to make sure the governance is right. you're now a CPG company, but when you were a pharma company, you had a lot more governance, embedded into it, which made you, make it slower. But what we did is for another pharma company, just like Pfizer, when they were on a journey to move to S/4HANA, we already started having innovation workshops. We said, okay, you're going to go live in July, August 2023. What can we do once you go live? We started planning that from February 24 onwards. That's how far we went. A year and a half before they were live, we were doing innovation workshop as to what you start using in S4 once in S4. And that's the story. They went live with the rapid move hybrid migration. Once they went live, we already implemented the first set of BTP applications by December last year, and now we implemented the first agentic AI apps for them on top of AI, on top of SAP. So you can see the journey is go live with S4 for Pfizer, move on from BTP apps, build workzone, build business process automation into SAP first, learn from it, get the needles out, make sure compliance is in, they agree that your BTP is a validated system now, and then bring in AI. And we know that we've got to go live by end of the year. We're still discussing with compliance guys as to what they need and prepare it. For us, doing the AI app itself was not time consuming. It's get the compliance to the process is much more time consuming. Therefore, we've shifted left and tried looking to do that maybe 6 months even before the compliance guys come in. So that's how we have been able to scale at a company like Pfizer without disturbing the entire ecosystem and making still sure that in a very, very governed and enterprise environment, they're still able to move forward with AI and generative AI. And this is just one page slide that I have to just understand the whole concept of what I've been talking. You have your data sets, and then you are basically doing some extractions, and it is very agnostic. You are then doing some data analysis, you're doing some text generation, you have your system of records below there, you have S4HANA, Ariba, Serial, DocuSign, what ISET is. You're pushing data to BW for HANA, or BW on HANA, or BW, whatever you have. And once you start getting into BDC Databricks, which will come about later, you start exposing the data for all the agents to pick up. Right now, what you're doing is you're going to different systems and trying to pull the data, writing APIs and making it all work together. In the future, with data sphere layer or a BDC layer, and with MCPs, which is coming out to be the new APIs, it's going to become much more easier to deploy AI applications across the corporations. We're talking about this being one page. So you could just take this slide, print out, go to the meeting, discuss this, put sticky notes. At the end of the day, you will actually have a working product on paper that you can go and build. And this is the blocks that we've said. You have to understand natural language. You have to understand text to code. You have to understand natural language generation, interaction. Like I ask a query, get a SQL back. And you need an underlying platform. So pretty much everyone has an underlying platform. If you do not have S4HANA, you have ECC, good enough. You may have read a little more about code to make it work, but it will work. And the reason is because you do not have core data services and you do not have the APIs that you can consume out of the box in S4, in ECC. And this is just a couple of slides here, just to show you how the forward matching is happening. And the numbers that we have is that it does 50% cost reduction. It reduces the 30% time in handling your data and making sure that the overall time duration by the time you do a forward match in fully automated fashion without a human in the loop. This is where everything matches correctly with AI. You will save over 90% time. Obviously, where you have problems, where you have seen that I'm looking at Japanese language documents and need more humans to look, obviously it takes more time. But what we have noticed is that majority, because this is a very rule-based and structured way of doing it, the agents are much faster because it's not having to do a lot of thinking. It is, in a way, in an old-fashioned way, it is automation. But it's intelligent automation because it calls the right agent based on what it is to do. If the tax code is wrong, it's called a tax agent. It will not do if, then, else, and where. And you call the right tax agent for that country to solve the problem. So you're handing it over to an agent who is very specifically, solving that tax problem for that particular country. That's the beauty of how we are doing. So what's happening is the orchestration that we're doing the orchestration based on intelligence, and that's the difference. That's where could have done this 4 years, 5 years, 6 years back. Yes, I could have, but I would have written a lot of programming. It would have taken me 9 to 12 months to deploy this in production. With AI and generative AI, I'm able to do it in 3 months. That's the difference. Technology-wise, not a big difference. And the second difference is, I can chat with SAP and he'll give me the answer back. Earlier, I could not chat with SAP. If I had to chat with SAP, I would call a developer, I have to give him my specs, we'll write a program. The program will be in production after 9 months, and then you can ask the question and get an answer back. That has changed, and you can get it out immediately. And this is the slide where I want to show you where all this, what I explained, can be done. You can just explore yourself. So the Discovery Center for SAP is the go-to platform. All of you can have access. You can be an architect, you can be a CFO, you can be a CISO. You will get there, you see your AI services, you see the BTP services and guidance framework. This is basically giving you all the inputs you need to get started. This is the architecture slide, because in architecture meeting, we have an architecture, reference architecture here with every possible links here. So any architect here, you want to do a draw.io diagram, go pick the right draw.io diagram, modify it for yourself. 5 minutes later, you're done. It would have taken an architect 2 days to draw a proper BTP diagram. Today it takes 5 minutes because the templates exist. Then the business AI platform here, I'm showing you 251 results. I've practically, physically, and purposely removed S4HANA from here. Why? Because not everybody is on RISE. Not everyone is live on RISE. You still have 251 AI apps that you can activate with just BTP and SaaS products. There are still about 30 or 40 of them, which are SAP RISE products or for public cloud or private cloud. And obviously, if you're public and private cloud and you're live, you can activate it. But without that, also you can activate 251. And when I activate 251, these are the things that you can activate and start benefiting today without having to engage a developer to build something, because it's already pre-built. Will it work 100% for you? No, it won't, because it's standard. You have to still customize it. It's like S4HANA. You still do some, but the customizing that you do will be more like an SPRO customization or a development customization. And then you've got a business accelerator hub which tells you all the APIs that S4 has. This is where you make your business case to S4. You go and say, guys, I'm able to do this ECC, but it takes me 6 months. You give me S4, I can do it in 2 months. And how do you prove that? You have the business accelerator hub and all the different integrations out of the box that SAP is providing. And it not only that, it actually can log you. If you log in with your user ID here, you can activate Joule, you can ask questions, and gives you answers. And this is available to everybody who has SU's ID in SAP today. Again, one of SAP's best kept secrets. There are 2 best kept secrets from SAP. One is BTP doesn't run on ECC. Best kept secret it does. Second thing, you can do Joule without having any BTP subscription on your API.com by logging in. I mean, I'm pretty sure very few people, how many of you knew this existed? So 1, 2, 3, 4 people, 5 people. So now everyone of you know. So if you don't take anything away from today's meeting, this is the first thing you take away, right? And if you look at it, how to update an alternate pay for invoice, a supply chain finance question, big thing, where the bank pays the vendor and the company needs to pay the bank. How many know that? To just figure it out, you need a finance guy to tell this how to do it, a developer to understand what it means, and then to find the right API to do the patch back to SAP. It's probably a 2 weeks of workshop. You've got an answer now in a minute. And I asked this question on the way here on my on my train, and took a screenshot because I thought that's the best way to show that I could make this slide up on the train on the way here. If I can do that, all of you can think about use cases. On your way back, you can ask this on your mobile phone. You don't even need a laptop. All you need to do is remember your ID password to log in, and you can ask any SAP question with answers. So just, yeah, go ahead.
What's it is different from Joule for consultants?
Joule for consultant goes much more deeper. This is, I would say, level 1. It's just doing some search from the documents which are on this website and giving you some answers. But at least it gives you a feel of how Joule will work. Joule for consultants then goes much deeper because it looks at not only SAP Help. This side, SAP Help, it looks into
OSS notes.
Learning to SAP.com. It also looks into all your OSS notes and KPDs. So it goes much more deeper. This gives you like a freemium version, like as free what I can get, right? And this will give you an idea that if it's free so much, imagine how much paid version will give you. So if someone's afraid of, should I invest in Joule for consultants? This is one couple of searches, couple of questions, couple of prompts, you know that this works. If this works for free, then paid will be much better. So I didn't want to sell Joule for consultants here, but indirectly the question did come up, right? But the idea is that even if you don't have Joule for consultants, this is still gives you good starting point to get started. Any other questions? Yeah.
Just a quick point on the Discovery Center you had in the last one. Since there's a lot of architects who define budgets and all that sort of thing, if you go into this and you log in, as Devraj mentioned, you can actually create your own estimates on some of the BTP services, which allows you then to be able to support your business case. What does it cost to run AI units or whatever it may be?
Yeah.
It's also another hidden point, but very valuable for enhancing your business case.
I did not stick that. You can see I'm not logged in here. If I had logged in, you will see what my cost is and what more all of the stuff is. So you do not want to do that. But yes, in the B2B service, you have a cost estimator, and if you say I'm doing this B2B, I need these these three services, and I need to do 10,000 invoices every month, and blah blah blah. It will estimate a cost for you. Again, you don't have to do it. Your architects can do it. Your basis guys can do it. But if you want to know what will it generally cost me to do an AI, you could get an idea of what the consumption is going to be out of just this website. Yeah. So that's it from my side. Yeah, go ahead.
One question would be like, for many of the enterprises, they might have an agreement with, like, say, OpenAI or Gemini or any other LLM word. So how should the enterprise architect approach the AI use case? Like whether they should think, okay, and whether BTP can support different.
Right. So I think I'll let SAP answer the question, but my view as a consultant is that nobody is a pure 100% SAP house. You have SAP BTP and you have Azure services and you have AWS services and GCP services. So for us, what works best is a joint reference architecture where you say, hey, I'm going to do this. The reason I'm going to use AI core is very simple. Why do I use API management? Why do you use CPI? I use CPI because SAP gives me APIs to connect from SAP to SAP, SAP to non-SAP, if I'm doing it. How many of you will use CPI if your Salesforce is connecting to ServiceNow? Nobody. Why would you? It can be done. I'm not saying it cannot be done. No offense to the CPI folks here. But if you're connecting Salesforce with ServiceNow, you're not going to do CPI. Similarly, if you have a lot of data which is taking from Syrian or some sort of a contract management system and a product lifecycle system which are not SAP and getting it into an LLM, putting it into a data lake, you may or may not be using SAP's BTP, you might be using the OpenAI's or Gemini's directly. If you're using BDC, then that might change in the future. But my going position is that if you are using generative AI Hub and consuming the LLMs from SAP, there are certain advantages that SAP will bring forward, the integration which is useful. But if you're saying, I'm only getting a small amount of data from SAP, 90% of it is outside SAP, then you start looking at doing it outside. And it's simple. You can put everything on BTP and connect to AI core, connect to the GPT which is outside of BTP on an Azure account and integrate it. You can always do that. So I would say, depending on the use case, you decide which one works best.
Sorry, just to add to your second part of the question, right? So one of the strategic choices SAP made is not to build their own large language model, right? So within the business AI hub, within the AI core services, you can use the right language model for you, depending on the use case. So some of the very heavy LLMs you can use for more complex use cases. If you have a light use case, you can choose to use the older LLMs in order to manage the cost and the speed considerations, right? So you can choose OpenAI, Gemini, Anthropic, all these models. And in fact, that strategy is paying out quite well because then you can bring in the latest and greatest models very fast. So for example, the ChatGPT 5 came in within 2 days of being released on the AI core services. So you don't have to wait and onboard a new model and it take time for it. You can start using it on day 2.
Yeah. And last question before I let my fellow speakers come on, not to hog the time, is that if you do not have a governance structure for LLM and you have a BTP contract, then you can consume the LLMs from BTP. That's the advantage. Because if you say, hey, I want to now get ChatGPT, GPT 5.0 onboarded into my organization, and your IT and your security takes 3 months to onboard it, then you're waiting for 3 months. By the time they onboard it, the next model will come out, right? With the fact that you have a framework ready, you might be able to do it faster. So there are advantages and disadvantages for both. So you have to look at it, but a lot of customers are using both BTP and hyperscale services, so looking at joint reference architecture is what I would say. And there's a lot of joint reference architecture on the website as well.